On a cold January night in Minneapolis, federal agents rushed toward a crisis. Before the night was over, government vehicles would be smashed open, sensitive materials stolen, and a rare FBI reward would be announced. This was not a random act of vandalism. It happened during unrest, confusion, protests, and fear. This story breaks down what happened, why it matters, and what authorities fear may come next. The city on edge. Minneapolis has a long and complicated relationship with federal law enforcement. From the George Floyd protests to more recent immigration enforcement actions, tension between residents and federal agencies has never fully disappeared. By January 2026, those tensions were once again close to the surface. That night, federal officers, including FBI and ICE agents, were responding to a separate and serious incident involving a federal officer being shot. As news spread through social media and word of mouth, crowds began forming. Anger mixed with confusion, fear turned into movement. The night everything broke. While agents focused on securing the scene of the shooting, multiple unmarked federal vehicles were left parked nearby. According to federal authorities, several of those vehicles were vandalized. Windows were smashed, doors were forced open, vehicles were entered and searched. Officials later confirmed that government property was stolen from inside the vehicles. Some items were described as sensitive. At least one firearm was taken. This was not simple property damage. This was a direct breach of federal security. Why this incident is different? Government vehicles are vandalized from time to time, but this case stood out. The FBI announced a reward of up to $100,000, a level usually reserved for terrorism-related cases or major threats to public safety. Why such urgency? Because stolen federal property can expose undercover agents, compromise investigations, reveal informant identities, and put lives at risk. Authorities have not publicly detailed exactly what was taken, and that silence is intentional. The ICE shooting connection. The vehicle break-ins did not happen in isolation. Earlier that same night, an ICE officer was shot, triggering a large federal response in the area. As law enforcement activity increased, protests and unrest followed. Officials believe the confusion created an opportunity for individuals who were not simply protesting, but actively targeting federal assets. Arrests and suspects. Within days of the incident, federal authorities announced at least one arrest. Investigators said the suspect had alleged gang affiliations and was connected to the theft of federal property. Charges included theft of government property and weapons-related offenses. However, authorities emphasized that the investigation was far from over. The reward remains active, suggesting that key individuals or materials have not yet been recovered. Why the FBI wants your photos. The FBI publicly asked for help from the public. They requested cell phone videos, social media clips, dashcam footage, and any images captured in the area that night. Modern investigations rely heavily on digital evidence. A single video frame can reveal faces, movements, vehicles, or connections that witnesses never notice. In the age of smartphones, the public has become part of the investigative process. Fear of what comes next. The greatest concern for authorities is not what already happened, but what could happen next. If stolen materials are misused, they could lead to retaliation, leaks of sensitive information, or further attacks on federal operations. Similar incidents involving federal vehicles have occurred in other U.S. cities. Minneapolis may not be the last. Public trust versus federal power. This incident sits at the crossroads of civil unrest, federal authority, and public distrust. Some residents view federal agents as protection. Others see them as provocation. The broken vehicles became a symbol of something larger, a country struggling to agree on the role and reach of federal power. Final thoughts. The FBI's $100,000 reward remains active. Many questions remain unanswered. What exactly was stolen? Who else was involved? Will all materials be recovered? One night, a few broken windows, and consequences that may ripple far beyond Minneapolis. Sometimes, the most dangerous damage is the kind you cannot see. The moment everything changed. As the night unfolded, emergency radio traffic increased. Reports came in that multiple government vehicles had been broken into near the scene of the unrest. These were not ordinary cars. They belonged to federal agencies, including vehicles used by officers involved in ongoing investigations. Windows were smashed, doors forced open, equipment was taken. Authorities would later confirm that sensitive items may have been inside some of the vehicles, items not meant for public hands. Within hours, the FBI would make a rare move. A $100,000 reward was announced for information leading to arrests. That number alone raised questions. Why so high? Why so fast? And what exactly was missing? What was inside the vehicles? Federal vehicles often carry more than radios and paperwork. Depending on the operation, they may contain encrypted communication devices, tactical gear, surveillance tools, case files or evidence, access badges or credentials. Authorities refused to publicly list everything taken. That silence was intentional. Security experts explained that revealing what was stolen could create additional risks, including copycat crimes or misuse of equipment. One former federal investigator explained, "When you see a reward that large, it usually means the potential damage goes beyond property loss." The concern wasn't just theft, it was what stolen federal equipment could enable if it fell into the wrong hands. Why Minneapolis matters. Minneapolis holds a unique significance in modern American law enforcement history. Since 2020, the city has been a focal point for police reform debates, a hub for large-scale protests, a testing ground for federal and local coordination. Federal agencies operate cautiously in cities with heightened public scrutiny. Every move is watched, every action amplified online. That night, misinformation spread quickly. Some posts claimed the break-ins were staged. Others said the vehicles were abandoned. None of those claims were supported by evidence. But the damage was done. Confusion fueled speculation. Speculation fueled distrust. The FBI's decision to offer $100,000. The FBI rarely offers six-figure rewards. Unless national security could be impacted, federal officers are directly endangered, stolen materials pose long-term risk. This reward signaled urgency. Officials stressed that they were not only looking for the suspects, but anyone who knew what happened to the stolen items afterward. Investigators believe the break-ins may not have been spontaneous. They are examining whether the vehicles were targeted intentionally, the suspects knew what they were looking for, someone provided inside information. So far, no conclusions have been announced publicly. Surveillance, tips, and the search. Minneapolis is one of the most surveilled cities in the Midwest. Investigators began reviewing traffic cameras, business security footage, public transit video, social media posts, cell phone location data with warrants. The FBI emphasized that tips could remain anonymous. This was deliberate. In tense environments, witnesses may fear retaliation or distrust authorities. Anonymous tips often break cases like this. Community reaction. Reaction across Minneapolis was mixed. Some residents expressed concern about federal presence, others worried about safety and accountability. Community leaders called for calm, urging residents not to spread unverified claims. Civil rights advocates reminded the public that criminal acts during unrest can undermine legitimate protest movements. That message echoed across social media and local radio. A history of federal vehicle targeting. This was not the first time federal vehicles had been attacked during periods of unrest in the U.S. Similar incidents have occurred in Portland, Seattle, Washington, D.C. In most cases, authorities later discovered that what mattered wasn't the damage, but the information potentially compromised. These incidents often take months to fully resolve. Some never receive public closure. Why this case is still unfolding. As of now, officials have released limited updates. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. Federal investigations often move quietly. Search warrants, interviews, data analysis, all happening behind closed doors. The FBI has stated the investigation remains active. The reward remains on the table. What happens next? Several outcomes remain possible. Arrests linked directly to the break-ins, recovery of stolen materials, additional charges tied to broader investigations, or silence if evidence dries up. Experts warn that the absence of public updates does not mean failure. Sometimes it means prosecutors are building airtight cases. The bigger picture. This incident highlights a growing challenge in modern America. How do federal agencies operate safely in cities where trust is fragile? How do authorities protect sensitive materials during unrest? And how does the public separate fact from rumor when emotions run high? The answers are not simple, but the stakes are real. Closing. A shattered window, a stolen item, a $100,000 reward. What happened in Minneapolis that night may seem localized, but its implications stretch far beyond one city. As investigators continue their work, one question remains. Was this a crime of opportunity or something more calculated? Only time and evidence will tell.